What if the future of media measurement isn't broken, just misunderstood? In a world chasing perfect attribution and drowning in fragmented data, there is a place where real collaboration, rigorous research, and actual progress is happening. I'm Noor Nasir for Adtech Unfiltered. In this episode, Tameka Kee, SVP at the Coalition for Media Measurement, or CIMM for short, breaks down the state of media measurement, why attention is emerging as a vital currency, and how her organization is helping the industry navigate AI, privacy, and data collaboration. This is a candid look at some of the industry's most complex problems and some of the folks working to solve them. Let's get going on this episode on measurement with Tameka now. First things first, Tameka, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Noor.
I want to talk about CIMM. I want to hear about the variety of people that you have focused on media measurement, joining together to work on a challenge that is really overwhelming for people in the advertising space. Tell me a little bit about CIMM to kick things off.
Sure. So CIMM was founded about 20 years ago. And originally it was a space where all of the kind of traditional linear TV networks were getting together to try to come up with interesting new ways of understanding their audiences. Obviously, they had Nielsen at the time, but they were just trying to find other alternative ways of measuring and understanding their audiences. Fast forward to 20 plus years later, under the purview of John Watts, who is our managing director, CIMM has a much greater kind of expanded purview. So we focus on three areas. We focus on measurement and currency, which is the traditional sort of way of understanding how media is bought and sold, how it's transacted, how do you value an audience, how much should an agency pay for it, how much should a publisher charge for it. We also focus on new metrics, so new ways of understanding media and audiences. One of the key ways right now is attention. For example, lots of interest in quantifying attention and possibly transacting based on attention. So we're doing some work around that. And then the third area is data collaboration, because so much of the video and TV ecosystem is powered by data, whether it's audience data and audience insights, whether it's retail purchase data now filtering into the retail media networks. And so we feel like with those three areas, which are pretty chunky, we are able to help, as you said, help all sides of the industry work together to solve challenges around measurement. I think one thing that's unique about CIMM, there are lots of trade organizations in our industry. What's unique about us is we are a place where all the different trade organizations come together. So you think about the IAB, the 4As, the ANA, they all serve parts of the market and they're trying to create change and trying to create standards, but they serve different constituents versus all of those organizations as well as their members. So media agency holding companies, so like an OMG, an IPG, a WPP, as well as big media providers. So like a Comcast, NBCU, a WBD are all part of CIMM. We also have platforms that are part of CIMM. So a lot of the ad tech platforms that are helping power the growth in CTV and video are members of CIMM. And then we also have a number of nonprofit organizations and agencies. Like one that comes to mind for me is the Canada Media Fund, which is so interesting. So they are a publicly funded organization based in Canada, and they have an interest in understanding, because essentially they report to the Canadian government and their donors, they have an obligation to help understand who their audience is, to help give reporting about how well they're serving that audience. And so they joined CIMM because there's no place for a company like us, for an organization like us, to better understand how to measure our audience as they fragment across all these different platforms.
I think you hit on what was going to be my second question, which was what types of organizations want to join CIMM, but I think you covered that pretty thoroughly. I do have a follow-up on what is it that is motivating them specifically to join your organization. I do think you touched on it, but it seems like people are really motivated to join in. What is it that's consistently attracting them uniquely to your group?
What I would say is, and I say this with as much love as possible, CIMM is a place for data nerds. It is a place for the ad sales and content sales research people at most of these organizations. And so when you think about the business of a researcher, their job is to collect insights. Their job isn't necessarily to sell. Their job is to collect insights. They spend time in dashboards and databases. And so I think part of what draws our audience to us is we are a space for researchers. And we do have BD people and product people in particular that also join. But I think it's a space for people who are focused on research. We're also not selling anything specifically. We are a not-for-profit. And so all of the revenue that we generate is put back into things for our members, like our events, like our research reports, among other things. And so we are a space for research, I say with a capital R. This is not, one company's survey that says, oh, our product reaches this many households. This is actually multiple data sets being analyzed by third parties. And then we have a consultant typically come up with insights, and then it is collectively peer reviewed by all of the people who participated, as well as our steering committee, and then it gets put out. So we have a rigorous focus on kind of research, and I think that makes us stand out. To some extent, I had an enlightening conversation with someone. So we do have events and we sell sponsorships for our events. And I had an enlightening conversation with one of our potential sponsors where she said, CIMM is great, but you're not our target audience from a perspective of who we're trying to sell to. Our team learns from you. Our team is educated by you. And so we get value out of the membership in that way. But the researchers are not who we're trying to reach. And so on one hand, I feel like every organization wants as many people as possible. And it was a bit of a challenge. I was like, oh, well, I guess we're not getting that sponsorship. But it was helpful to understand, like, this is who we serve. And the people that we serve are very happy. And so I think that's why people are drawn to us for the rigor that we bring to the research, the collaborative perspective and approach that we take. And also we are very focused on helping them better understand how the CTV and video ecosystem works.
Yeah, that qualification really separates you from everybody else in the space. I think we don't even have to get into the nuance of how many people say, we do this thing related to something. Actually, we have a product. That's the only thing that matters, and sponsor our conference. And that's where they're at. They're really more so in the product business than anything else. Also, I think the need is there more so than ever before. They're looking for deeper understanding of how to make measurement work because it's in so many ways an unsolved problem, which leads me to my next question. If you were to pick a number on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being media measurement is the most broken to 10 being the least broken, where on the scale would you say we are right now relative to all the challenges that we're encountering with media? Again, 10 is terribly broken. 1 is hardly broken.
1 is hardly broken.
I flipped it around. Sorry about that. 1 is hardly broken. 10 is severely broken.
So 10 is like, we're not ever solving anything. I would honestly say, we're probably at a 4, meaning broken, but not terribly. And I say that because I take a page from a number of our members' books when we talk about things, and they're like, sometimes it just needs to be good enough. Like, of course we want it to be perfect. Of course we want national and local and big data and panels, and we want to close the loop, and we want incrementality, and also we want to measure attention, and also we want to measure retail media, and also we want to measure sales, right? I think that's a tall order. And I think that our industry has made tremendous strides in terms of fixing measurement. It's still pretty siloed. And I think that there are areas of improvement, but I don't think we are in a disaster state because I don't think the billions of dollars that are transacted would be transacted if it was broken beyond sort of repair.
You mentioned the big R research, having real nerds, real research nerds working with you all. What is it that you are offering to people who are hungry for, validated research and information? How are you presenting that to people in need in the advertising and marketing community?
We deliver insights in, I would probably say, 3 ways. One is like traditional, like the outputs of our research. As much to my dismay from a marketing and content perspective, our research reports are like 60 pages long. And so that's one of the core things that we put out is actual research with a capital R that people can read through. And those are available to our members. Sometimes we make the full breadth of the research available to non-members, but at a minimum, we make the executive summary of a piece of research that we put out. So for example, I want to say it's 2 months ago, we released a report called Passing the Baton that was a diagnostic of the programmatic TV ecosystem. And so the analogy was data in programmatic TV it has to be passed to so many people from buy side to sell side. And so it's like pass the baton. And the analogy flows through the research in that there are so many places where that baton falls. And that's what happens from a measurement perspective. That's what the data can't go from one place to the next. And then that's why the advertiser can't get their results, or that's why the publisher doesn't get the credit. So primarily we put out sort of meaty research pieces. I will add that for that report, we actually played with Google's Notebook LLM, and we fed the report into LLM, and it turned it into a podcast with like these AI authors. And we just put it up as an addendum to the research because we're like, look, maybe somebody wants to listen to this on their way home as opposed to reading this. And so we're definitely looking to make our insights come alive in a different way. So 1 is research. 2 is our events. So we have 4 events per year, typically 2 one-day events, 1 CIMM East, 1 CIMM West on the West Coast, 1 in London. And then we have a big 2-day event called CIMM Summit. And at those events, we preview research, we dive deep into the research, and we have panels and discussions and town halls around the research. So that's another big area. And then we have a number of virtual meetings and events where we have these working groups where subject matter experts get together and dig into a problem or a solution or a product and unpack it for each other. So as an example, we have a working group called the Smarter TV Data Working Group. It's very focused on ACR data that flows in the smart TV ecosystem. A project that came out of that group that is actually soon to be launched was exploring the case for a universal open watermark that could be used to help track creative campaigns across the different smart TV OEMs. Now, the IAB's ASIF creative framework exists, Ad ID exists. So this is not something to replace either of those, but it's essentially the group sort of wanted to look into whether watermarking ads would be something that could help with measurement across different platforms. That group got together for months at a time to come up with this piece of research. And the output is research, but over 6, 7, 8 months, these meetings with this group is the knowledge is being shared there. These people are problem solving together. And so that's the third way that we serve our members and help deliver the research and the insights and the collaboration that they're looking for.
A lot of stuff going on.
Oh my God.
I'll pull us to a question a little bit away from CIMM, but in your wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. What is a media metric that the advertising community is obsessed with, but maybe they should be less obsessed with it than they are?
What is a metric that the industry is obsessed with that I think they shouldn't be?
And it needs to be qualified. I guess there could always be the wrong advertiser worrying about the wrong thing.
No, I'm thinking there's so many metrics and how they're used differently. This is going to sound strange, but I would say a sale. Obviously, sales is what they want to drive. But I think that coming back to your first question in terms of what's broken, truly attributing a sale to the many different media exposures that a person can have before they actually make that purchase is probably one of the most broken things in our space. It's getting better. There's lots of companies that are blending sales data in particular with CTV data to prove incrementality and sales. But I think that it's still very imperfect and it's kind of last touch attribution. And I think that it does a disservice to so many of the other ways that someone can be exposed to a piece of content. Like I heard an analogy recently where, people talk about the purchase funnel. Some people talk about a purchase flywheel now. One person was like, purchase is the consumer journey has exploded. You can be exposed to a brand in so many different ways. I came here to this event. I walked past a number of different brand logos. How do those brands count that exposure? And if I then go buy something eventually, that exposure doesn't get any of the credit for that. Whereas the last thing that I saw or clicked or that they were able to count that I was exposed to will typically get the credit. So I would rephrase that and say it's not the sale, because of course they want the sale. It's kind of the last touch, using the last touch as that benchmark is something that I wish we could get away from.
I think people are still clinging to a desire for last touch as much as we say that we're moving on. We're struggling to move on. And it's also very much advertiser dependent, but that's why you're so focused on education in so many ways. I think I'm going to jump right into some questions around AI. I know AI has been an area of heat for 2025. I keep saying that what's really going to date any interviews for 2025 is like the marker that people kept saying AI. They'll look back in time and say that those people were obsessed with saying the word artificial intelligence. So you've called out a need for industry collaboration around artificial intelligence and it's being embraced. Is there anything in particular that you think needs to be done? Are there any barriers preventing us from really collaborating in meaningful ways to take advantage of how artificial intelligence can help us move forward around media measurement?
There's an organization, I think it's called C2PA. It's really interesting. They are a coalition of companies like Adobe, Sony, Google, among others, that are all of these kind of digital content platforms. And they are working together to come up with a way to watermark content to ensure that people know that something was created by a person or whether it was created by AI. I think it's C2PA, like the Content Provenance Authority. And I think that is the perfect example of the type of collaboration that we need when it comes to any type of AI, so they are very specifically focused on helping media owners verify their content is actually their content, or that an ad that runs on their content is running on their content and not some AI generated version of their content. So there's that piece that's to help protect the media owners, among other things. There's also a piece, I think, around helping users understand when something was created with AI versus not. Again, whether that's a watermark, whether that's there's lots of disclaimers in newsletters now. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but someone will say, this content was created by a human with the help of AI, or this content was created by AI. I don't think that there's one way for our industry, and I'm talking about advertising in particular, and then even further down into measurement. I don't think there's one way that we can create standards and or, try to develop best practices around regulating AI. I think that subject matter experts or companies with collective interests, so again, the companies for the content provenance, they have a vested interest in ensuring that their content is what it says it is, and that customers know if I see something from Disney, it's actually from Disney and not from user XX57 that made something out of Disney. So I think solving specific AI challenges, one, ensuring that creators are paid for their content if an LLM is trained on it, is something I think that our industry could get behind. That has nothing to do with measurement, but you see kind of the new lawsuit with, I want to say it's Disney and other company, where you've had a bunch of lawsuits against OpenAI and other companies from individual artists for the past couple of years. But now the big companies have pulled out their big guns because they're seeing harm too. And so I think that I would say that there are a couple of areas to organize around in terms of developing standards and best practices for AI. One specific area from a measurement perspective, I think, is around figuring out how companies can use synthetic data, synthetic populations to sort of model users. I think developing standards around that will help synthetic data become more accepted and more useful moving forward.
Yeah. Synthetic data has been brought up a whole bunch this year as I've been noting it, and there's a lot of curiosity around it. Is that being brought up at CIMM? Or?
It is.
Okay.
So it's interesting because this touches on a couple of areas. It touches on signal loss and privacy. It touches on kind of ensuring that the models that companies use to target and create planning campaigns actually serve the market that they're actually trying to serve. So there is a ton of interest in synthetic data. I think for it to be accepted and adopted by like some of the big holding companies or some of the big media providers, there needs to probably be some standards around what the definitions are, how it can be used. How do you label it? How do you label a synthetic population as opposed to a human population? Like, how do you delineate those things? And so I think there's some areas for standardization around that.
A lot of stuff going on in the AI space. I also had some questions about privacy and identity challenges. How do we really balance the capacity to maximize data utility relative to our responsibility to uphold privacy compliance? What does that look like when we're thinking about measurement in media?
And it's interesting, some of the privacy regulations that I think that have come out have been so broad that targeting and activation is one thing, right? Using data to figure out who someone is and sell them more stuff sounds like sacrilege to say in our industry, but it could be sketch. It could be creepy. Using data to find out whether you actually reached the person that you tried to reach is a different thing to me. And so under some of the privacy regulations, measurement is swept up in the same way that targeting is. And I think that that's a challenge because I do think that we should be able to measure, not even from a big publisher standpoint. I think small media owners should be able to measure who watched their content, who interacted with their content so that they can be paid and thrive and function. There is a way to focus on data privacy while still enabling innovation and accurate measurement. I think it comes down to a couple of things. I think it comes down to terms and conditions and making them much clearer for everyday users and not just saying like, oh, we want to collect your data to do this. No, being like, we want to collect your data. Here's how we collect it. And here's what you get in exchange for it. And you can choose to opt out or opt in, which I think is an important thing. I will use an analogy from a conversation that I had earlier today where I use this analogy a lot. Kroger, which is major grocery holding co. in America. Kroger has a media network. Kroger has a brand called Ralph's. I used to live in Los Angeles and I loved Ralph's. It was my favorite grocery store. I moved a number of times and every time I moved, I'd get a little coupon kit from Ralph's and it'd be like, welcome to your new home. Or again, they'd just give me like free Simply Orange juice, which I loved at the time. And maybe once I was like, Ralph's knows where I live. Ralph's knows that I moved. Ralph's knows every time because I swipe my little card every time. Maybe a hint of creepiness, but overwhelmingly, it was like they give me coupons that I love for brands that I love. They provide value. And so there is a clear value exchange in that case. And I think that if measurement providers can communicate that value exchange to users and to regulators, then I think they will be able to continue to operate. But I think it has to do with proving that value exchange. Kroger never made me think twice about them. They clearly provided value and utility. So I never felt uncomfortable swiping my card before I bought something.
It's a great example. And I think it's just interesting highlighting to me that there's a big gap between the folks who get it right and know that their end consumer is aware, even if it's a little bit subconscious, but you have an awareness and then you say, I'm okay with that, versus being on the other side where we've hardly informed you, we're almost trying to trick you, and it's a big, big swing. We're still trying to figure that out for a lot of advertisers who, for whatever reason, or marketers, I should say, who really need to connect the dots in a stronger way.
I think, unfortunately, the rapid growth of programmatic, and at this point, we're talking about 10 years ago, right? The rapid growth of programmatic made people drunk off a fire hose of cheap data. And unfortunately, there's no going back, right? Unfortunately, we can't sort of get advertisers off of the data the way that they wanted to have it before. And we also can't go back and undo kind of what's been done from a user perspective. There's a reason that people who don't work in our industry, if we tell them, oh yeah, I work in advertising or I work in programmatic, they're like, oh, you're the reason my sneaker ads follow me around, right? Like that example is thankfully starting to go away. But I think we have to do a better job now at clearly communicating, what are you doing with this data? How does it improve? I'll give one more example. Thinking of other loyalty programs like airlines, like hotels, like those things. If an airline were to take the loyalty data, and which is what so many of them are doing, and create a partnership with another brand that makes sense, like a hotel or a rideshare service. And so if your flight is delayed by an hour, if the airline could automatically connect to the rideshare service and have your car show up an hour later, that's value. And that is value from a partnership of theirs where they are sharing the data in some way, right? We just have to do a better job at providing value and also communicating what that value actually is to the user.
Obviously, we can talk about so many other things, but I will land the plane on asking this simple question. The future of media measurement is what? Fill in the blank for me.
Complex and exciting. One of the first questions you asked is like, how do you connect all of those dots, right? Like, is media measurement broken? And it is complex. We have a super fragmented media market. I think we are in this massive shift from mass media, which has been happening, to sort of super niche, micro-targeted media. And that's everything from B2B, like this content, right? There are people who want to reach your audience. There's subject matter focused content. There's social media content. There's all of these little micro niche communities. And this fragmentation makes it really hard to form a better picture of who your audience is and how and where to reach them. So that complexity is going to continue. But then I think I said exciting.
You did. You did.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting because some of the smartest minds in our industry are working on it. And we have so many tools like AI and some of these really interesting partnerships that I think will help solve some of the problems and also create new opportunities for what I come back to is for media to thrive and flourish. Better measurement will ultimately also help indie publishers and indie content creators that I think we need to kind of help power the next wave of media.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity for folks to learn more about CIMM. We'll let people take it from there. And I just really appreciate the time and the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Nora. This was great.
Thanks to Tameka Kee for joining us to make sense of where media measurement is headed. In an industry that can prioritize chasing shiny metrics, this was a good reminder that real progress comes from doing the hard and often nerdy work together. If you care about the future of TV, data, and measurement, check out more on CIMM on their website and share this episode with a friend. I'm Noor Nasir for Adtech Unfiltered, another episode coming right up.